Welcome back to QuickSpeak, the English podcast where we like to unpack all sorts of interesting topics. And today we're going to be talking about something that's super relevant to everyone, attachment styles.
Ooh, interesting.
Have you ever noticed how some people just seem to like breeze through relationships
Right.
and others are just like way more reactive?
Yeah, for sure.
I've always wondered what's behind that, you know?
Well, that's a great question, and it really gets to the core of why understanding attachment styles is so important. They're like these emotional blueprints, almost like a guide
Okay.
for how we connect with others in all kinds of relationships.
So we've all heard of like
Right.
secure, anxious, avoidant,
Yeah.
the three basic attachment styles. But how do those actually like develop in the first place?
Well, think about a baby. They're completely dependent on their caregivers
Right.
for everything, right?
Yeah.
Food, comfort, safety. And it's those early interactions, especially when a baby is distressed, that really lay the foundation for how they learn to view themselves and how they view other people.
So if a caregiver is consistently responsive and loving, the child learns that, okay, I'm worthy of love and the world is generally like a safe and predictable place. So that's how secure attachment develops.
Exactly.
That
Those
doesn't-
kids grow up feeling really confident in their ability to form strong, healthy bonds with other people. They're comfortable with intimacy,
Yeah.
but they're also okay with being independent. That's the ideal.
Right. What happens when those early experiences are not so consistent?
Right.
Like, let's say
Yeah.
a caregiver is sometimes attentive,
Yeah.
sometimes distant, maybe even neglectful.
Yeah.
How does that impact a child's developing attachment style?
That's where we start to see those anxious and avoidant patterns emerging. So if a child learns that their needs aren't always met, it creates a sense of insecurity,
Yeah.
anxiety in relationships.
So they might become more clingy or like
Yeah.
always needing reassurance.
Totally.
Maybe even a little possessive
Yeah.
because they're so worried about losing that connection.
Exactly. And that's really the hallmark of anxious attachment. It's this constant fear of, do they really love me? Are they going to leave? And that can be so emotionally exhausting.
Yeah.
Not only for the person experiencing it,
Right.
but also for their partner.
But it makes sense when you think about like where it's coming from.
Right.
And that
It's
fear of
trying to-
abandonment.
That underlying fear. So then on the other end of the spectrum, we have,
Yeah.
the avoidant folks. And they're often described as like emotionally distant or aloof.
Right. It can almost seem like they don't need anyone.
Yeah.
Like they prefer to be alone,
Right.
but deep down, that's often a defense mechanism.
Right.
Remember, their early experiences taught them
Yeah.
that their needs might not be met.
Yeah.
So they've learned to suppress those needs.
So instead of risking like
Yeah.
rejection or disappointment,
Yeah,
they kind of just shut down emotionally and create distance to protect themselves.
right. It's like avoiding that potential pain of not having your needs met.
Exactly. They might struggle with vulnerability. They might pull away when things get too close. Sometimes they even sabotage relationships before they can get too serious.
Wow.
It's almost like they're unconsciously trying to keep people at arm's length.
Like they're saying, I'll connect with you, but only to this point. You
Mhm.
can't come any closer.
Like there's this invisible barrier around their heart.
But it's interesting because even avoidant individuals
Right.
still have a need for connection. Right.
Absolutely.
Oh.
That's important to remember. Everyone, regardless of their attachment style, has a fundamental need for connection. It's
Yeah.
wired into us as humans.
So how does this all like play out in different areas of life?
Right.
We've talked about romantic relationships, but these patterns probably show up in friendships, families, even the workplace, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Attachment styles are like a lens through which we view all of our relationships. They color our perceptions, our expectations, our reactions to others.
So let's dive into that a little bit more
Okay.
and explore how these different attachment styles actually manifest
Yeah.
in all these different areas of our lives.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
It'll be fascinating to see how these patterns unfold in different contexts.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it's amazing how these attachment patterns that we developed as children can have such a huge impact on our adult relationships.
Yeah.
Take friendships, for example.
Okay. Yeah.
How might someone with an anxious attachment style approach friendships?
That's interesting.
Yeah, imagine someone who just craves that constant connection, that reassurance, always wants to be in the loop, wants to spend time together.
Right.
But that intensity, it can actually be overwhelming for some people,
Yeah, for sure.
which can actually lead to an imbalance in the friendship.
So they might be the friend who's constantly texting,
Yeah.
calling,
Yeah.
needing validation,
Exactly.
and I could push people away.
Yeah, and it's not that they're intentionally trying to be clingy or anything like that. It really stems from that deep-seated fear of being abandoned or not being good enough.
Right.
And so they might overanalyze a friend's comment or a canceled plan and see that as a sign of rejection.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it can be tough.
Yeah, sounds emotionally exhausting.
Yeah.
So then how would an avoidant individual typically navigate friendships?
You might notice that they really value their independence. They probably have a smaller circle of close friends.
Right.
They may appear very self-sufficient and kind of emotionally contained, you know?
Yeah.
They prefer to keep conversations light, avoid that deep emotional sharing.
So they might be the friend that's there for like fun outings,
Yeah.
but shies away from heart-to-heart talks.
Right.
Or offering support during tough times.
Exactly. They might struggle with vulnerability.
Yeah.
And intimacy, right? So they
Yeah.
prefer to maintain a certain level of emotional distance, even with friends that they're close to.
So it's not that they don't care.
Right. It's not about not caring. It's more about just feeling uncomfortable with those intense emotions.
Right.
Or feeling like they might be a burden.
So what about secure individuals? How do they tend to approach friendships?
They generally strike a really healthy balance between connection and independence.
Oh.
They're comfortable being vulnerable, sharing their feelings, but they also respect boundaries and understand that everyone needs their space.
So they're the friend you can rely on. That's a good listener,
Right.
but doesn't smother you.
Exactly.
Someone who's present and supportive,
Yeah.
but also has their own life going on.
Yes, absolutely. They tend to be great communicators. They express their needs really clearly and can handle conflict constructively.
Wow.
They approach friendships with this sense of mutual respect and trust, which, really creates a solid foundation for those lasting connections.
So it's amazing how these early patterns influence our social lives too.
Totally.
But let's shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and talk about the workplace. I'm curious how attachment styles might play out in a professional setting.
Yeah, that's a great transition. Imagine someone with an anxious attachment style.
Yeah.
In a work environment, they might constantly seek approval from their boss, worry excessively about job security, and be really sensitive to any kind of criticism.
So they're always asking for feedback, double-checking their work,
Hmm.
taking constructive criticism very personally.
Yes, exactly. Their anxiety might even manifest as perfectionism or people-pleasing, maybe even difficulty delegating tasks.
Oh, wow.
Because they feel this need to control everything.
Okay, interesting. Now, what about avoidant individuals? How might their attachment style show up at work?
You might observe that they actually excel in roles that allow for a lot of independence and autonomy.
That makes sense.
Right. They might be highly productive, super efficient, and they often prefer to work solo. And they might avoid those collaborative projects that require vulnerability or emotional interdependence.
So they're really brilliant in their own lane, but might struggle with teamwork
Yeah.
or asking for help when they need it.
Exactly. And they might also come across as emotionally detached or distant from their colleagues. They might prefer to keep conversations strictly professional, which can sometimes be misinterpreted as aloofness or disinterest.
Interesting. So then, securely attached individuals, what are they like in the workplace?
They generally thrive in those collaborative environments. They feel really comfortable expressing their ideas, seeking support when they need it, and offering help to others.
So they're like the ideal teammate.
Heidi, sir.
They share credit, offer support, and don't let the workplace drama get to them.
Yeah, they bring this sense of stability and balance to the team. Their secure foundation allows them to really focus on the task at hand, build trust with their colleagues, and handle any challenges that come up without feeling personally threatened.
That's great.
Yeah, and this can lead to greater job satisfaction and overall career success.
It's really remarkable how these attachment patterns from early life
Mm-hmm.
can have such a lasting impact on our professional lives too.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's not forget about maybe the most significant role that we play,
Yeah.
which is parenting. So I'm curious how these styles might influence our approach to raising children.
That's a really crucial aspect of how attachment styles manifest.
Yeah.
Because, our own experiences as children often unconsciously influence how we interact with and respond to our own kids.
Okay, so how might an anxious parent approach parenting?
They might be incredibly devoted and loving,
Okay.
but really struggle with setting boundaries and letting their children explore independently.
Yeah.
Their worry and fear of their child getting hurt or rejected, right,
Yeah.
could lead to overprotectiveness
Yeah.
and this constant need for reassurance.
So they might be the parent who's hovering,
Mm.
checking in constantly,
Yeah.
having difficulty giving their child space
Yeah.
to make their own mistakes.
And learn from them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they might also struggle with separating their own emotional needs from their child's needs,
I see.
which can lead to enmeshment and difficulty fostering that child's independence.
So then what about parents with an avoidant attachment style?
Yeah.
How might their parenting approach differ? They might really prioritize independence and self-reliance, encouraging their kids to be strong and solve their own problems,
Right.
which can be valuable in some ways. But they might struggle with expressing affection openly or being emotionally available when their child really needs that comfort or support.
So they might appear emotionally distant,
Yeah.
uncomfortable with physical touch,
Yeah.
or dismissive of their child's emotional needs,
Right.
prioritizing logic and practicality over empathy.
Exactly. And they may have difficulty understanding and responding to their child's emotional cues,
Right.
which can lead to those feelings of disconnect and frustration for both the parent and the child.
Okay, so then secure parents, how do they typically approach raising children?
They generally create a really warm and loving environment
Oh.
where children feel safe to explore, express themselves,
Right.
and make mistakes.
That's great.
Yeah, they're really attuned to their child's needs, providing comfort and reassurance when it's needed, but also setting clear boundaries.
Yeah.
And fostering independence.
So they're present and engaged,
Yeah.
offering hugs when needed, but also encouraging their child to try new things, learn from their experiences, knowing they're there to provide that safe and supportive base.
Exactly. And they model healthy emotional regulation. So they're teaching their kids to identify and manage their own emotions while also showing them that it's okay to ask for help and support when you need it.
So it's amazing how our own attachment styles can play such a significant role in shaping our parenting approaches too.
It really is. And, it highlights the importance of self-awareness. Because by understanding our own attachment patterns and how they might be influencing our parenting,
Right.
we can make conscious choices to create a more secure and nurturing environment for our children.
Absolutely. So it's all about breaking those potentially negative cycles and providing our children with the emotional foundation that they need to thrive.
And what's truly remarkable? Attachment styles aren't set in stone. Right. Even if we didn't have that most secure start in life, we can still develop healthier, more secure patterns through self-awareness, therapy, positive relationship experiences.
So there's hope for all of us, regardless of our past.
Exactly. It's never too late to embark on that journey of healing and growth. We can all learn to connect in more fulfilling ways.
As we've been talking about these different attachment styles, I can't help but think about how all of this is like playing out in the digital age. I mean, so much of our communication and connection happens online now,
Oh, for sure. That's a great point. The rise of social media, dating apps, virtual communication, it's definitely added a whole new layer
Right.
to how we experience and express our attachment styles.
It's almost like a whole new playing field for those early patterns to like emerge,
Yeah.
So let's take online dating, for example.
Yeah.
How might someone with an anxious attachment style navigate that world?
Oh, that's a good one. Just imagine constant swiping, the anticipation of a match, the uncertainty of whether your messages are being read or responded to. For someone with an anxious attachment style, that can be a recipe for just like emotional turmoil.
So they're checking the app obsessively,
Oh, yeah.
overanalyzing every message,
Sure.
reading into every delayed response,
Absolutely.
and getting like way too invested before they've even met someone in person.
Exactly. Because the digital world, it can really amplify those fears of rejection and abandonment.
Right.
They might be sending multiple messages without getting a reply, constantly checking for notifications, maybe even like resorting to online stalking to try and ease their anxiety.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
So then how about avoidant attachment?
Okay.
How might they approach online dating?
They might present a very curated version of themselves online,
Okay.
carefully crafting their profile, engaging in these like superficial conversations, but keeping their true feelings and vulnerabilities hidden.
Because they're like slow to respond.
Yeah.
Avoid revealing too much personal information, and then just ghost if the conversation starts to get too...
Exactly. They might enjoy that initial like flirtation and attention, but
Right.
then as soon as things start to feel real or require some emotional vulnerability, they withdraw.
I
So
see.
online dating can provide that sense of control and distance that feels safer for someone who struggles with intimacy.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about securely attached individuals?
Yeah.
How do they tend to approach online dating?
I think they approach it with a healthy balance of like openness and caution.
Okay.
They're willing to put themselves out there, but they also have really strong boundaries.
Right.
And they're not afraid to walk away if they sense like red flags or incompatibility.
They're not just in it for validation
Just
or
listen
fleeting
to-
attention.
Very
Right.
clearly.
They actually want to find a connection.
Right. They're looking for a real connection based on mutual respect, shared values.
So it's interesting how these patterns even extend to the digital world. It's not just about dating apps either. I mean, think about social media. How might attachment styles influence how people interact online in general?
Social media can be a breeding ground for both connection and comparison. And for someone with an anxious attachment style, those likes, comments, followers, they can become a real source of validation, but also anxiety.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So they're like constantly posting,
Yeah.
seeking approval,
Yes.
feeling deflated if their posts don't get enough attention.
Totally. And they might be super focused on how other people perceive them online,
Yeah.
which leads to a lot of self-doubt and insecurity.
They're like so sensitive to negative comments.
Yeah.
And they're always comparing themselves to others.
Right.
Which just makes them feel worse.
Totally. Social media can be a trigger
Mm.
for those deep-seated fears of not being good enough.
Okay, and then how about avoidant attachment?
Okay.
How might that play out on social media?
They might have a very carefully curated online persona, presenting a very polished image, but keeping their true thoughts and feelings private.
So they limit their
Yeah.
interactions.
Yeah.
Avoid sharing personal details.
Right.
Maybe use humor and sarcasm as a way to deflect any emotional intimacy.
Exactly. They might be the ones who post infrequently, keep their comments brief and witty, and definitely avoid engaging in deep or emotional discussions online.
Yeah, like they prefer to observe from a distance rather than fully participate.
Right, exactly. They might even use social media as a way to escape from real-life connections.
Wow.
Finding solace in the anonymity and control that the online world offers.
So then how about secure attachment?
Okay.
How do they tend to approach social media?
I think they see it as a tool for connection and communication.
Yeah.
They use it to share authentically, stay in touch with friends and family, engage in meaningful conversations. They don't take it too seriously, and they definitely don't let it define their self-worth.
So they post when they feel like it, engage in conversations that they find interesting,
Right.
and don't get caught up in, like, the drama or the pressure to present this perfect image.
Exactly. They have a healthy perspective on social media, recognizing its limitations, and focusing on building genuine connections, both online and offline.
This has been so eye-opening. It's amazing to see how these early attachment patterns can have such a big impact on our lives.
Yeah,
From our closest relationships to how we navigate this digital world, it's crazy.
it really is. But I think it's also empowering to understand these patterns because it allows us to make more conscious choices and create healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
Absolutely. And no matter what your attachment style is, there's always room for growth and change. So with awareness, effort, and support, you can absolutely move towards more secure.
And fulfilling connections.
Well said.
So that brings us to the end of our exploration of attachment styles. We hope you found this conversation insightful and thought-provoking.
Yeah, it's been great.
And remember, this is just a starting point. There's so much more to learn about attachment theory.
For sure.
So we encourage you to keep researching, reflecting, and discovering how these patterns play out in your own life and relationships. Absolutely.
And if you're struggling with insecure attachment patterns, don't hesitate to seek help from a therapist or counselor.
Yeah, they can provide a lot of support as you work towards healing and growth.
So before we go,
Mhm.
we want to hear from you. What are your biggest takeaways from this episode? Have you noticed any of these attachment patterns in your own life or relationships? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
And as always, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into all sorts of interesting topics. Let us know what you want us to talk about next.
Yeah.
We're always up for a new adventure.
Until next time.